So let me bring that up. Show. Okay, so everybody can see the first slide, which is just telling you where you are. And let's see. Okay. Everyone sees that well? Yes. Okay, great. Okay. So we also covered this when we did the prayers of the tradition, but I thought it would be nice to bring it up again. This is the order of the prayers. So everywhere in the Himalayan yoga tradition, this is how the prayers are chanted in the morning and again in the evening. And I've heard from, I think, Jackie and Carrie, that in Honesdale, they're not doing the morning prayer right now. There's a little bit of a different schedule. I'm not really sure what that is, but traditionally, this has been the order of the prayers. So in the morning, we have the Guru Stotram, the peace prayer, the prayer at dawn, prayer for harmony, prayer of completion. And we've already looked at 1, 2, 4, and 5 in our last session. And then in the evening, we do the Guru prayer, the peace prayer, the prayer for harmony, and then what we're going to look at today. Okay, so these are the verses from Shankaracharya's Saundarya Lahari, verses 1, 3, and 8. And we just call it the evening prayer. Okay, and then probably the next thing I would like to do would be the prayer at dawn, also by Shankaracharya. And this one is called the morning prayer. Okay. So here's a little, actually, bit of information on what this prayer is. So the Saundarya Lahari, meaning wave of beauty, is a famous literary work in Sanskrit attributed to Adi Shankaracharya. Okay, so he was a very important teacher, writer, commentator on many of the scriptures from the 8th century. And he is considered an authority on all things Vedanta, right? And most of the prayers that we use in the morning and in the evening are from the Upanishads. So they're Shanti mantras or peace prayers from the Upanishads. The morning prayer and the evening prayer are something completely different, right? And they are from Shankaracharya's work. And what's interesting about the evening prayer is it is really a devotional prayer, right? So it might seem like a bhakti, a set of bhakti verses, right, in praise to Divine Mother. And that's not the kind of thing that Shankaracharya usually wrote, right? Most of his writing is very, I don't know what the word I want to say. I was going to say left brain. Yeah, it's more left brain, right? It's an analysis of scripture, an analysis of philosophy. This was something very unique, right? A foray into bhakti and specifically devotion to the Divine Mother. And as such, it is very beautiful mantra. So some believe that the first part of the Ananda Lahari, so the this work is kind of broken into the wave of beauty, which is Saundarya, and the wave of bliss, Ananda, was etched on Mount Meru by Ganesha himself. Its 103 shlokas praise the beauty, grace, and munificence of the goddess Tripura Sundari as goddess Parvati. Okay, so that's where they come from. And here's the evening prayer. So I thought a nice way to kind of go about this might be, I will read it to you just so you can see the words and hear them. And then we're going to look at a translation. And with these prayers, there are many English translations, and they're all just a little bit different. All right. So after I read you a nice polished translation, I'll go through and give you the meaning of the words in a little bit more of a choppy way so that you can actually see what each word means. Okay. So there's two ways of looking at a translation, right? If we don't know what the Sanskrit means at all, we just kind of take the English on the bottom and hope it's close, right? Hope it's a good translation. Or we can look at it a little bit more deeply by knowing the meaning of some of the words. And I'm not going to excruciatingly go through one word at a time, but there are little phrases that we can look at. Okay, sound good? Okay. So this first verse is Shiva Shaktya Yakto Yadi Bhavati Shakta Prabhavitum Nache Devam Devo Nakalu Kushala Spanditumapi Atath Twam Aradyam Harihara Virincha Divirapi Pranantum Stotum Va Katam Akrita Punya Prabhavati. Okay. And if you listen to recordings of this, there are many. All right. So we have a recording by Pandit Rajmani. In Sanskrit class, we listened to the recording by Stoma or Stephen Parker. I have a recording of the ashram singing this in India. And these are famous verses. So you'll find recordings outside the tradition as well. And I've mentioned this every time I've presented the prayers. Nothing is right or wrong. All right. So if you find one that you like, you can learn that kind of rhythm to it. All right. So each person chanting will have a little bit of a different way of expressing it. And I think the best way is to find your favorite and kind of work from there. And in the same way, too, if you're not, and I'm not very musical, it's fine to just say them too, without any real melody to it. Okay. So you could also just Shiva Shaktya Yakto Yadi Bhavati Shakta Prabhavitum. Perfectly fine too. Okay. Some people sing it very dramatically. I think both Panditji and Stephen Parker have very emotive recordings of this mantra. Okay. So again, it's your preference. So this is the English translation that is given. The unmanifested reality can manifest itself only with the help of Mother Divine. All the forces are under her command. Without her help, God is not able even to stir. Is it possible for the aspirants who have not performed good karma either to worship or to praise thee, O Mother, who are worshipped even by the three great powers of creation, protection, and destruction? Okay, so this is one translation, and this might be from the Himalayan Institute's teacher training manual. I have so many resources on this that I don't even remember sometimes where I got them, but you'll see some pretty divergent translations. The meaning is the same, right? But how it's expressed is different. So I have something that I found on the Green Message website, and I know the Sanskrit class is familiar with it. It's greenmessage.org, and it's not part of the Himalayan tradition. It's an ashram in India where they have taken many mantras and translated them word by word. Some of them are even marked for grammar, like this is a noun, this is a verb, all right? So it's a really nice resource if you can find the mantra you want to look at more deeply, because it breaks it up like this. Excuse me. Okay, so we were to kind of jump into this verse a little more deeply. We see Shiva. Okay, and this is true for all of our prayers. The word Shiva here can be thought of in two different ways, right? So we think of it in the sense of the Hindu religion. There is a form of God that is the god Shiva, and you can picture him, right? He's blue. He often has a tiger skin, maybe a crescent moon in his hair. He's described as being kind of a ascetic person, right? Who spends most of his time out in the forest with wild animals and deep meditation. And so there is a mythological figure of Lord Shiva. And if you like to think of it like that, that is fine. And you'll see translations here that will say Shiva cannot manifest. All right. This translation decided to translate Shiva as the unmanifested reality. Okay. So with our yoga mantras, we're really not thinking about Hindu gods when we use words like Shiva, Vishnu, Brahma, right? We're talking about the primordial energies associated with these words. Okay, so Shiva is the power of pure consciousness. And when you say Shiva, you can think of one or the other or both. Okay, so understanding that Hinduism has taken these powers, these energy forces in the universe, and given them a face, right? And there are writings called the Puranas, which are kind of like the fables of Indian culture, where these gods have adventures and teach lessons and are given like a whole backstory, right? So they're people. But I think it's important to understand that yoga is not a religion, and it's not asking you to believe in Hindu gods, okay? We're understanding it at a much deeper level than that. Okay, that makes sense to everybody? Because I know that sometimes, especially like in a teacher training, when people are coming into the institute and they're brand new, and maybe they're from a yoga studio and they've never seen this, there can be a little trepidation with, okay, well, what are you teaching me, right? So this is a universal concept of divine consciousness. Okay, so Shiva, Shaktya. So Shaktya is the creative force of the universe and could be seen as the goddess or the divine mother. So indeed, in this writing of Shankaracharya's, he is talking about the divine feminine as a person, right? So it seems like he's describing a woman. And there are other parts of this scripture where he will talk about her hair, her eyes, her jewelry, her clothing. But again, we're understanding that as something much deeper, okay? So not that this is a woman sitting in the clouds, right? But that this is divine feminine energy. What is divine feminine energy? Okay, and here the word that's used is Shaktya, okay? And then Yukto Yadi means accompanied with. Bhavati Shaktaha becomes capable, Prabhavitum, to create the universe. So the idea then is that Shiva, or pure consciousness, cannot create the universe without the divine feminine, right? The power of manifestation. So without her, he can't actually make anything, okay? Next line, Nache Devam, if not so, or if he is not accompanied by her, Devo, and Devo here in my writing is translated as the luminous one. So this is a word that just means divine being, and we're thinking back to Shiva. Nakalu Kushala is not capable. Spanditu Mapi, even to move. Okay, so pure consciousness Shiva, unaccompanied by Shakti, can't even move. Okay, and the next line, Atas, for this reason or hence. Twam here means you, and we're referring to the Divine Mother. Aradyam, our worshipful by. And then we have Hari, Hara. And Hari is a word for Lord Vishnu. Again, not necessarily looking at that as a Hindu god, but Vishnu as the energy of life, right? Of sustenance in this world. Hara is another word, again, for Shiva, right? Divine consciousness. And Virincha is Lord Brahma. So you're at all familiar with Hindu religious thought, there is a trinity of three gods, right? And we remember this, I think, from the Guru prayer. It's Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So Brahma is the divine force that creates, that brings life into this world. Vishnu is the power or energy that sustains that life. And then Shiva is the power or energy that brings it to a conclusion. Right. So the three powers together are really the circle of life, right? Creation, life, death, and then again, creation, right? So it's seen as kind of a circular existence. So here we're naming the three gods, Hari, Hara, Virincha. Okay. And just like in the Guru prayer, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Maheshvaraha. So Shiva's got a lot of names. He's hard to keep track of, right? So here he is Hara. Here we see Shiva. Maheshvaraha in the Guru prayer means like the great Ishvara, another word for him, right? In the Mahamrityunjaya, O Triyambakam. Triyambakam means the three-eyed one. Again, that's a reference to Shiva. Virabhadra, from asana class, Virabhadrasana, right? The warrior poses is again a reference to Shiva. So he's a force with many names. So what this is saying then is you are worshipful by the three gods. Dibir api means, and even other ones. Okay. So there is an idea then that the divine feminine is seen as even greater than, all right, the three, the trinity of the three gods. Okay. Pranantum, to salute. Stotum va, or even to sing in praise of you. Katam, how? So how can one even sing the praises of someone so powerful, right? Akrita punya means one who is meritorious, has had meritorious deeds in past lives. Okay. Prabhavati, becomes capable. So the idea is that if you are studying this mantra and singing this mantra, you must have done something right. You need good karma to even be able to sing the praises of the Divine Mother. Okay, so there is something for everybody here, for everybody who uses this mantra that led you to know it. Okay, it's not for, it's not a random kind of thing. That this mantra is offered to you as part of your practice. Okay, is that good? Yeah, okay. Good. So you can see then that a translator has decisions to make, right, about what to call a lot of these words. Okay, so then for the prayers of the tradition, when we're doing the evening prayer, we then skip to verse 3. And I have this word jahari in parentheses, and I'm going to explain why after I read the verse for you. Okay. Avidya nam antas timira mihira dvipanagari jadanam chaitanya stabaka makaranda sruti shruti daridra nam chinta maniguna nika jan majala dao nimagna nam damstra muraripu varahasya bhavati. So I'm trying not to sing. Okay, so one thing that is interesting to know is that if you went to the store and you bought the Saundarya Lahari, it would have this word Jahari here. It would say Makaranda Sruti Chari. This word Sriti actually has no translation, and it is a word that was switched out by Swami Rama. Okay, so our version of the evening prayer, we do not say Jahari. We say Makaranda Sruti Sriti. And if you were to look this word up in a dictionary, you could not find it. And I even sent it to Nikolai Bachman because I thought maybe there's some obscure meaning. But it's so obscure that even Nikolai does not know. So this is an example of being part of a living tradition, right? When a guru gives a prayer to students to learn to recite, there may be changes. Okay. And we've seen that with the Sri Sukta too. If anyone is chanting Sri Sukta, that it doesn't match the most common version of it. Okay. So oftentimes a master teacher will have a variation. I just wanted to let you know that in case you do have a copy of that text and you're confused, wondering why the word is different. Okay. Okay. So this verse says, "Thou art the sun that dispels the darkness of the ignorant. To the unknowing, thou art a spiritual flower overflowing with honey. To the needy, thou art the gem which bestows one's heart's desires. And to those who are drowned in the ocean of births and deaths, thou art the rescuer." Okay, so let's look a little more deeply at the words. Okay, so avidyana means for the ignorant. All right, and you can see avidya in there. On top, this whole part I'm just putting together. Antas timira mihira dwi nagari. Okay, so for the ignorant, she becomes the island. This word dwipa means an island. In the city, Nagari, where the luminous sunrise, Mihira, so Mihira means the luminous rays of the sun. And we might even say not just the sun, but of illumination or spiritual illumination takes place, driving away the overcast darkness. So Timira here means gloomy darkness of ignorance. Okay. So as we probably have gotten a sense, word order is pretty unpredictable in Sanskrit sometimes. So it's easier, I think, to hop around like that. Okay. Then Jadanam, so for the dull-witted, Chaitanya Stabaka Makaranda Sriti. She becomes the nectar. So Makaranda means nectar of awareness. Chaitanya is awareness. Gushing forth. So this word sruti means flowing out. Okay. And then if you were to look at the standard text, Jahari means river. So flowing, sruti chari, flowing river, but we're saying flowing sruti. Okay. Good. Daridranam. So daridranam means to the poverty ridden. Chinta mani guna nika. So she becomes a necklace made of chintamani gems. Janma jaladao, in the ocean of worldly affairs. And then the last line. Okay. Nimagnanam, for those immersed or drowning. Damstra, a tusk, and I'll explain this in a minute. Mura, dull. Ripu, false. Varahasya means of Vishnu. Bhavati, she becomes. So this comes from a myth of Vishnu as a boar. Okay, so in the Puranas, there are all these stories of the gods and the adventures and trials that they go through. So, okay, here I actually have it written out. In a symbolic Hindu mythology, when the demon Hiranyaksha tormented the earth, personified as the goddess Bhudevi. So we'll notice too that the goddesses kind of flow into one another. Okay, so in this myth, the goddess Bhudevi was the earth. Okay, and a demon tormented her and her inhabitants until she sank into the primordial waters. Okay, so this demon chased the earth goddess down into the waters. Vishnu took the form of Varaha, and as Varaha, so Varaha is a boar, right, a wild boar, he descended into the depths of the oceans to rescue her. Varaha slew the demon and retrieved the earth from the ocean, lifting her on his tusks, and restored Bhudevi to her place in the universe. Okay. So that's all summed up in rescuer. But the image that we're actually seeing is Vishnu saving the earth goddess, right? Lifting her up with his tusks. And this word for a tusk, damstra. Okay, so I'm good with that one. Okay, and then the prayer concludes with verse 8. So he chose verses 1, 3, and 8. Swami Rama for our chanting. And this verse says, Sudha Sindor Madhye Sora Vitapi Vati Parivrite Mani Dvipe Nipo Pavana Vati Chinta Mani Grihe Shiva Kare Manche Paramashiva Paryanka Nilayam Vajanti Twam Danya Katichana Chid Ananda Laharim. Excuse me. Okay, so our translation for this one says, Blessed are the few that worship thee, the flood of consciousness and bliss, having as thy abode the lap of the supremely auspicious one, in the mansion built from the gems which yield all desires, situated in a garden on the island of gems, surrounded by divine trees in an ocean of ambrosia. Okay. So I'll look at this one a little bit more closely, word by word. Okay, so Sudha Sindor Madhye means in the midst of the ocean of nectar. Sura Vita Pivati Parivrite, surrounded by the gardens of trees, so surrounded by trees. Mani Dvipe, so in the island of gems. Nipo Pavanavati, encircled by a small wood of nipa or kadamba trees. So a nipa tree is a sacred tree. Chinta Mani Grihe, and a mansion made from Chintamani gems. Okay, so we're describing the very magnificent place where she is. Shiva Kare Manche, on a couch that is Shiva. Okay, so we're imagining Shiva lying, resting, right? Parama Shiva, Supreme Shiva, Paryanka Nilayam. So reclining on a bed. Okay. And that's a rather familiar image in Hindu art, is the god lying down. All right. So kind of showing that the energy of consciousness is a static kind of thing. Right. And then we see the goddess on that couch, which is Shiva, surrounded by gems, right? Surrounded by beautiful sacred trees. Bhajanti means they worship. Twam, you. Danya means they're fortunate. Katichana, the few. So these few that do worship the Divine Mother are very fortunate. Chid Ananda Laharim, experiencing waves of blissful consciousness. Okay. Good. So we get a pretty good sense of the meaning, right? The words, what the words mean. Yes. Okay, so this is what I normally do as we go through these mantras. And I think you're gonna all know this, so I'll just speak it through. And if you have questions, do stop me. I've said in other presentations that Sanskrit's not that hard to read if you have a good transliteration. That being said, the transliterations out there are very different. All right. And like I do the teacher training portion where they learn the prayers, and Honesdale is often kind of changing how the transliterations are done. Sometimes they put H's in where they're not really needed to help people who have never studied Sanskrit. Okay. So if you're picking up a text, you've never studied one moment of Sanskrit, and you want to do your best to speak a mantra, some transliterations will try to put in helps. If you've been working with Sanskrit for a long time and you know the transliterated alphabet really well, these helps are not helps because they're more confusing. All right. So for folks who have been doing this for a while, having a nice clean transliteration is really important. All right. Because you're like, why is that H there? You know, or are these other little helps here, or why are M's not marked, or this or that. So the copy of the prayer that I'm giving here is clean. All right, I've gone through and made sure that I've taken any helps out of it. And I will send you guys the PDF. So for all the mantra intensives that I've done, I'm very happy to share the PDF of the slideshow. And then you can go back, and probably what's most useful would be the very last page where we're going to look at the mantra all broken up, okay? But these will always be a pure transliteration. So important to know, in the Sanskrit alphabet, there are 4 short, simple vowels. A, I, U, R. And A, I, U are easy because we have them in English. R is a little bit tricky, but a lot of fun to try to say, right? So anywhere you see an R with a dot underneath it, R. Sometimes you'll see R with a dot underneath it and then the letter I. And again, this is a transliteration that's trying to help you. But the I doesn't really belong there because it's not a separate vowel I. So if you see an R with a dot underneath and then an I, you probably want to throw the I out. Another thing you'll see if a transliteration is trying to be even more user-friendly is there will be no R dot. It'll just be RI. So if you think about a word like Krishna, right? So Krishna, if it's written in a way that's very easy, will be just written K-R-I, Kri. Okay. If it's a little bit more true, it'll be K-R with a dot underneath I, Kri. But how it's really written is K-R dot, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. There's really no E in there at all. Okay. The I is there to help. Because if you've never studied Sanskrit, you wouldn't even know what an R dot could possibly be, right? What a strange symbol. Okay. So it's going to be important when we talk about stress marking to remember these 4 sounds as the short, simple vowels. Okay. Then there are also long, simple vowels. A, I, U. And R dot has a long version too, but it really never happens. There's like 1 instance or maybe 2 in all of our texts. So it's usually not even bothered with. So for simplicity, you don't need to know it. Okay. The next set of Sanskrit vowels are the complex vowels. So the letter E makes the sound A. And I think that's true in a lot of European languages. So E in English can make a lot of different sounds. It's like in Spanish, or I know also in Croatian. In French, it would be like E with the accent, all right? A. And then AI written together, I, like an aisle, O, and ow, like in house. So complex vowels, A, I, O, ow. Okay. And the other thing you're going to see that doesn't look like English when you're reading a transliteration is M's with dots underneath. And I think you've heard the story of Anuswara by now. All M dot means is look at the vowel in front of it and nasalize it. Okay, and everyone I think is familiar with this very famous mantra, Om. Okay, so if it was OM, no dot, it would be Om, but it's Om. Okay, it's a nasalized O, not a letter O, a letter M. And most commonly and most standardly, it will be an M with a dot underneath, but it's not unusual to see a dot on top. So an M with a dot underneath and M with a dot on top are completely interchangeable. Okay, so don't let that confuse you. Again, it depends on who wrote it. Okay, you'll also see the letter H with a dot underneath, and this is called Visarga. And that means make a breathy sound. Okay. And what's important to know is that sometimes it's going to make a reduplication of the vowel in front of it, and sometimes it's not. Okay, so one place that we'll see the H dot a lot is in a word like namaha. So this could be pronounced namah, namah. And all it has is a on the end, namah. Sometimes the A will repeat and it'll sound like namaha. So the difference, namah, namaha. Okay. And it depends a lot on the meter of the chant. Okay. So I've looked at some of the Shanti mantras and then listened to them. And it depends on how many syllables the chanter wants to have in that line. Okay. So there are various metrical forms for mantra. And it's kind of convenient that I can say namah or namaha, depending on how many syllables I need to balance my line of verse. Okay. And it's not just an A. All right. And same thing here, not just an O, all of the vowels can come before the and before the. Another very famous Visarga example is Shanti. So again, you can hear Shanti and you can hear Shantihi. Both are perfectly timed. Okay. Okay, and then another thing that's unique to Sanskrit is a differentiation between aspirated and unaspirated consonants. So here's just a list of them down here. You will see them without an H, and you will see them with an H. Otherwise, if you look across, and ignore the C's for a minute, you know all these sounds. These are English sounds. Pa, pa, ba, ba, ta, ta. Easy. Okay, so if you see the H, there's a little burst of aspiration after your consonant. And I'm going to skip talking about the C's for a minute because they're not just like English. Okay. Okay, so a whole group of consonants that we do not have in English are the retroflex consonants, and those we make by turning the tongue back in the mouth. All right, I think, Kelly, you remember this? Okay, so I won't get into the whole mechanics of that. And I know Martha and Rosa have been heavily exposed to retroflex consonants. So cha, pa, ga, cha, na, sha. Okay. And your ear also have to get used to them. So again, the sha is a transliteration problem often if you don't have a really good transliteration. What writers will do is they will write sha and this one, sha, which is more like our English palatal, sha, the same. So you will see sh written for sha and sha with no differentiation between the two. Sometimes you will see this with an H. Again, trying to help somebody who doesn't know what an S dot is. And you'll often see S, they'll put the accent on it, but they'll still put an H. Okay, and these are these floating H's that are rather confusing. Okay. So good to know that about our sibilants. Sha, sha. And then we've already talked about how the V sound and the W sound, so the and what would be wa, are interchangeable in Sanskrit. Okay, so if you come across the letter V, it could be V, it could be W. Both are correct, no problem. Okay, and just to remember that the letter C, when you see it all by itself, sounds like the English cha, and it has an unaspirated and an aspirated version. So the letter C all by itself sounds like cha, and with aspiration, cha, cha, cha. Okay. And then I was going to, for the series, not talk about the R being different because R's can be confusing, but people were catching it. So the R is a lot like a Spanish R, ra, ra. So not the English ra, ra. We know Spanish, just use the Spanish R, or you think about the tongue kind of coming up towards the palate and going ra, 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 and dropping that trill, ra, ra, ra. Okay. So this is what you would probably need to know to read transliteration well. And I know you guys have heard it before, so I think we're probably pretty good with that. Okay. Okay, so here's the fun part where we start to make this mantra really easy to read. And back when I first started doing this, I was always looking for recordings and playing the recording, and with the recording, trying to see where syllable boundaries were. And then just from the melody where stress marking was, because at that time I did not know there were rules. All right. And I would tell people to divide your words into syllables, get a good recording. And that's still true. Say if you were doing something with an English song or poem, because in English, these syllable boundaries are not rule driven, right? They're a little bit, there are guidelines, but they're not as easy as in Sanskrit, right? Sanskrit is very systematic, which is nice. So if you have a mantra in front of you, you do not need a recording. All you need is a clean transliteration, and you can divide it into syllables. You can mark the stress on it, and you can pronounce it perfectly. Okay. So there's a great freedom in that because finding good recordings isn't always possible. And sometimes the difference between recordings can be frustrating. So if you have a good transliteration, the first thing you would want to do if you want to learn to pronounce something is to divide it into syllables. And it's actually pretty easy. Okay, because Sanskrit has a pretty predictable syllable structure, right? So if I'm going through a word, I know that a vowel is always the nucleus or the core of the syllable. There's no such thing as a syllable without a vowel. Okay, so that's where I'm looking for the center of my syllables. So if there is one consonant between two vowels, it will go with the syllable to the right, meaning it will begin the next syllable. If there is more than one consonant between vowels, the first one goes with the syllable to the left, ends it, and all other vowels go to the right. Okay, and we're going to actually look at this, but it's pretty easy. All right, if you see vowels, anything in between them is going to have to break up, right, to be separate syllables. If there's just one consonant, it goes to your right. If there's two, one goes left, one goes right. If there's three or four, the first one goes left, all the other ones go right. Okay, and with that simple rule, you can break up any Sanskrit word, including ones that are 3 lines long. All right, so some of these Sanskrit words, especially when they're compounds, can be 3 lines long. They can be very daunting. So if you break them into syllables, so much easier. Okay, and I do that with anything that's new. You know, I'm like, okay, where are my syllable boundaries? And this word Indriya is a good one to use as an example. Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3 vowels, so I'm going to have 3 syllables. All right. And if I want to break between these first 2 I's, here's a whole bunch of consonants, right? So pretty easy. The rule is in between 2 vowels, the first one, so the N, goes left. Everything else goes right. So this would break indri. Okay. And then the second syllable is pretty easy. Between the I and the A, there's one consonant. If there's one consonant, it goes right. Yeah. Indri, yeah. Okay. Okay. So the first thing I might do coming to a new mantra is to break up the whole thing. Okay. And then the second thing you'd like to do is to see where stress marking is. Okay. And again, there's a rule for that. And the rule for that is once you have your syllables all broken up, go to the very last syllable. If the last syllable is never stressed in a Sanskrit word, so it's never the right choice, unless the word is only one syllable long, then it's the only choice. All right. So you go to the last syllable and you're going to move left. So I know that's a little unusual, right? We're used to our Indo-European languages, everything goes right. But finding the stress marking, we're going to go left. If the last syllable is not available, we go to the next one and we look to see if it's a heavy syllable. And if it is, it gets the stress marking. If it's a light syllable, we keep moving. And we'll keep moving left until we find a heavy syllable or until we're at the beginning of the word. And then again, we have no choice. It's got to be that. Okay. So what is a heavy syllable? It's easier to say what a light syllable is. A light syllable ends with a short, simple vowel. A, I, U, R. And a heavy syllable is everything else. And these light syllables are actually very common in Sanskrit. Okay, we see a lot of cha, ta, ku, kri, all right? Not unusual at all to see simple, short, simple vowels ending a syllable. Okay. Well, these rules are pretty good. All right, I think again, not too new to anybody. Okay, so then if we were to take our mantra, and here it is. And I always have like one mistake. So if anyone finds it, you win $1, right? So I keep going through it and yeah, I can do it rather quickly, but then I keep finding things. So different transliterations of this mantra will break the words in different places. If you look at Devanagari will have a whole line all written together. All right. So it's the transliterator who's deciding where to break the words apart and which words to leave stuck together. Okay. So I tried to break it into as many separate words as possible because I think it's easier. Okay. So the first thing I did was to go through and break it into syllables. And if we look at just the first line, it's pretty, I think, simple to see what happened. All right. So the word Shiva, the V went right. So we're not talking about stress marking yet. Shaktya, we had a K and a T and a Y between the two A's. So the K went left and the T and Y went right. We had a K and a T between the U and O. K went left, T went right. Yadi, Vati, right? These are all pretty easy. Shakta, K went left, T went right. Prabhavitum. And I know you guys all know this, but just for the record, we need to remember that BH is one letter, right? So it can be confusing in the transliteration because it looks like two consonants, right? B and H, but this is just the way we're writing the sound B. And B in Devanagari is one letter. Okay, so don't let that confuse you that the B goes left and the H goes right. You can't separate them because they're one sound. Okay, good, just to be very clear on that. Okay, Vitum. So if you are working with this, and again, I'll send it to you. If you see any syllable breaks that are suspect, let me know. But I think that this is pretty good. Went through a couple of times. Okay, so what I would do is something just like this, and it's super easy to do if you've got it in a word format, right? You just put spaces with your space bar in between them. And then you want to go back through and mark your stress. Okay. And again, there can be a little variety with that if words are left together. So I broke this down pretty into pretty small units. But if I left words strung together into longer compounds, I might not have as many places where I'm stressing. Okay. Okay, so again, if we took, well, just for something different, let's come to the first line of the verse 8. Okay, so there's only 2 syllables, so it has to be the first one. Same thing here, it's never the last one. Okay, it's not very interesting. Same here, same here. Okay, so for vitapi, I'm going to start at the end. Can never be the end. I go left. This is short. I'm going to keep going. Or it's a light syllable. I'm going to keep going left. V. It must be V. Okay. Again, vati. Any of these 2 syllable words, it'll be the first syllable. And then for parivrite, start at the end. Can't be the end. Go left. Okay. And then the VR dot. It's a light syllable. Can't be that. Ri, short, can't, or light can't be that. So it ends up just being the first one, which is also light, but it's the default. Parivrite. Okay. So you can take a look too at the stress marking that I've done. Any word that's just one syllable, like twam, the whole word is stressed, right? If you find anything, let me know. And I can always fix it before it comes out in PDF form, but maybe it's good, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through it, and when something is stress marked, I just kind of do that with my hand, all right? And you can practice it in a more exaggerated way. Using your hand might be helpful, using your head, or maybe accenting things a little bit more strongly than you normally would until you get the rhythm of it. All right, then you don't need to do that anymore. So I would say Shiva Shaktya Yakto Yadi Bhavati Shakta Prabhavitum. You want to try it together? Shiva Shaktya Yakto Yadi Bhavati Shakta Prabhavitum. Okay. And if you know the rhythm of it, it sounds like Shiva Shaktya Yakto Yadi Bhavati Shakta Prabhavitum. All right. So it's also like really fun one to sing. Okay. So let's try the next line. We can do, I think we can do it together, right? Or do you want to hear it first? Okay, together. Okay. All right, let's try together. Na che. Na chade evam devo na kalu kushala spanditum api. Okay. And if you know the melody, you want to try to sing it. Na che devam devo na kalu kushala spanditum api. Good. Okay. Next line. Atas twam araryam hari hara virincha dibir api. All right, some are a little stronger than others. Okay, then let's sing it together. Atas twam araryam hari hara virincha dibir api. Good. Okay, next, let's do it slowly first. Pranantum sto tum va katam akrita punya prabhavati. Good. Okay, and then what's the melody? Pranantum sto tum va katam akrita punya prabhavati. Okay, is this good? Yeah. Okay. So make sure it's a little funny with Zoom because I can't hear you guys, but I'm hoping that hoping it's flowing. Okay, so let's look at the next line. Avidyanam antas timira mihira dvipanagari. All right, singing. Avidyanam antas timira mihira dvipanagari. Next line. Jadanam chaitanya stabaka makaranda sruti. Again. Jadanam chaitanya stabaka makaranda sruti. That's a little bit of a tongue twister. Sruti. Okay, line 3. Daritram nam chinta mani guna nika janma jaladau. Okay, again. Daritranam chinta mani guna nika janma jaladau. Okay, last line. Nimagnanam damstra muraripuvara hasya bhavati. Again. Nimagnanam damstra muraripuvara hasya bhavati. And sometimes this muraripu will be written as one word. I broke it. So it might not sound as much like muraripu. It might sound like muraripu. Okay. Okay, so then the last verse. Sudha sindor madhye sura vitapi vati parivrite. Okay, again. Sudha sindor madhye sura vitapi vati parivrite. So there's something really like phonetically satisfying too about chanting this. It's just lovely. Okay, next line. Mani dwi pe nipo pavana vati chinta mani krihe. Again. Mani dwi pe nipo pavana vati chinta mani grihe. Okay, and then if you've heard the recordings of this too, the beginning of line 3 is always a little bit higher. All right, it starts out Shiva Kare Manch. But we'll try that at the end when we do the whole thing. So line 3, Shiva Kare Manche Parama Shiva Paryanka Nilayam. Again, Shiva Kare Manche Parama Shiva Paryanka Nilayam. Last line. Bhajanti Twam Danya Katichana Cheda Nanda Laharim. Again. Bhajanti Twam Danya Katichana Cheda Nanda Laharim. There's the whole thing. So, oh boy, we're at 11:08 already. Okay, let's do the whole thing together. And we'll see if we can, you might have a little bit of a different rhythm depending on who you've been listening to. So I know for Martha and Rosa, we know the Stephen Parker version. If you've been listening to Pandit Rajmani, he's got a little bit of a different melody, but let's just do our best. So you ready? Shiva Shatya Yakto Yadi Bhavati Shakta Prabhavitum Nache Devam Devo Nakalu Kushala Spanditumapi Atastvam Aradyam Harihara Virincha Dibirapi Pranantum Stotum Va Katam Akrita Punya Prabhavati Avidyanam Antas Timira Mihira Dwi Panagari Jadanam Chaitanya Stabaka Makaranda Sriti Sriti Daridranam Chinta Maniguna Nikachan Majaladao Nimagna Nam Damstra Muraripuvarahasya Bhavati Sudasindor Madhye Suravita Pivati Parivrite Mani Dvipe Nipo Pavanavati Chinta Mani Grihe Shivakare Manche Paramashiva Parayanka Nilayam Bhajanti Twam Danya Katichana Chedananda Laharim. Now we conclude. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. And I'm realizing that when I did our little talk about sounds, we didn't talk about N with a dot over on top. That's a velar N. No. But if you're going to make the sound K after it, you're going to make a velar N automatically. So Yanka. You're not going to say Yanka, Yanka, Yanka. Okay, so as an English speaker, you don't need to know. But if you're curious who the N dot is, that's the N made in the back of your throat, like in sing. All righty. Good. Any questions on any of that? It's pretty straightforward. Okay.
You really do see where you slide and where, you know, I mean, it really helped to figure out where you take shortcuts, you know, when we've been singing it. So thank you.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah. And it's nice sometimes too, if you've been saying a mantra for many years, to go back and just make sure you're clean still. I have some mantras that I've been doing them over years. I'll make like little mistakes. I did that when I learned the Sri Sukta, right? There were like maybe 2 places where I was saying the wrong word. And don't once in a while check in with yourself. You're going to really cement that mistake, and getting rid of it takes a lot. You know, we can do it, but yeah, it's kind of a good checkup too for your practice.
Yeah.
Thanks. All right. Well, I'll send off the PDF to you, and yeah, if you're missing any of them, let me know. This should be number 4 if you want the PDF from any of the earlier intensives. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Tracy.
Okay, it's wonderful to see you guys. Have a beautiful Sunday. Good to
too.
see you too, Silka. Have a great one. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.